Today, we're looking at Diamine Blue Black. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Diamine Blue Black, like it sounds, is a blue-black ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Delike Alpha with a medium nib to take my notes for this video. Now before we get to the writing sample, let's take a look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done, and what we see is a blue line, a light whitish line, then that blue continues up and it becomes a much darker blue at the very top. So we see that it does stay a little bit, then runs, then starts to kind of stay some more. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and we see the blue line on the bottom stays much darker, much more in place before it flees up, and we do not see the darker blue at the very top. Resistance tests are done to see how the ink can be expected to hold up on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. The swab is allowed to dry for 3 days before I test it. Looking at the highlighter, we see that it doesn't really budge after 3 days. It's very impressive and very good for a note taker. Water does reactivate it, does pull a huge majority of it off of the page. Given time, I believe water will completely remove it. Now flush does much like the water did. It completely starts pulling it off the page, leaving almost, when we look where the smear spread, it takes a whole lot more. It becomes much more towards white on the paper, but I don't think you would need flush. Bleach is completely taking it off the page. Interestingly, where the bleach kind of drifted over when it was being blotted up, a very quick blot left black behind. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the range of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine Blue Black has a viscosity of 1.92, which is a fast-flowing ink. It's quite fast. Shouldn't be a problem for most pens. To find my average dry time, I use my writing samples from the extra fine and medium nib done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those to come up with my numbers. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds with a range of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. And Diamine Blue Black has an average dry time of 15 seconds. Totally normal in its time. Nothing special, fast, or slow about this particular ink. Now let's get to the writing sample. I got this ink in sample form, and admittedly, I am a fan of blue blacks. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub. I use a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. Clairefontaine gives us no bleeding and no ghosting. On the 1.1 we have no feather, no spread, no halo. It almost looked like I might have been seeing some, I'm not. No halo, no sheen, shade. This is why I like blue black ink. Blue black often gives very nice shade, and this ink is just that. It's fantastic for it. So it's funny, I started with blue black ink. It was the first inks I ever used. It was Cross, and I used it for 2 years, always in cartridge form, and I didn't like it. I didn't like blue black. And it wasn't until I started doing tons and tons of samplings that I realized I really do like blue black a lot because of the amount of shading that it tends to give us. Looking at the extra fine, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We have definite shading through all of it, all the way through. The letter F, where I'm putting for my extra fine, has shading. The has shading. Quick has a ton of shading. I love it. I wish I could get a green ink to shade this much, but it's just how it works, where it gets that little bit darker spot and you get your bit of black. 9 seconds to dry with the extra fine.
Medium gives us a darker blue, and definitely more towards the dark blue, because it doesn't actually get to black. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, shading like crazy. This is a shading ink. If you like shade, you need to like blue black ink. 14 seconds to dry. Look at that scrub. Look at the amount of color variation that's going on in the scrubby. Now the medium is like a medium tone to dark. The extra fine goes from a much lighter to a dark. And I could definitely recover this. Tomoe River, no feather. No bleeding, no ghosting. No bleeding. No bleeding. We have ghosting. My goodness, I can't speak. I got notes for myself, and I'm having problems reading them apparently. On the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We lose a lot of the color variation with this ink. It just becomes a very dark blue up there. Almost no color variation, almost no shade. With the, and I wrote M, but that's definitely my extra fine. I don't know what happened, but that's definitely my extra fine. Did I do that before? Nope, just this once. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. There's some shading. There is some shading. It does show up in the. We do get some shading in jumps. Again, I wonder about my thumb, looking at where that is, but I see it a little in over, and I see a little in fox. So we do get some shading. 16 seconds to dry. On the medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. And again, if I think about where my thumb goes because I'm writing, if that affected it for shade, because I'm not seeing a ton of shade here. I see a little bit in fox. I see a tiny bit in the, but not much else anywhere else. 22 seconds to dry. Now looking at both the scrubbies, on the extra fine, we definitely see shading that occurs on Tomoe River in the scrubby, and not so much that shows up with the medium. And, you know I said it for the Omos ink yesterday, but then here comes today where we get to see a recoverable smear 2 days in a row. We're on a streak. It started. Looking at Rhodia paper, we have no bleeding, no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, definite shading, crazy shading, love it. Look at the word diamine, goes from dark to lighter to dark, and then that E is super dark. Great shading through this. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Shade. Lots of shade. All the way through, every word is showing different shades of blue. That's why I like blue black inks. 11 seconds to dry. With the medium, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and shade. Not as much shade. It's all darker because it's a wetter pen, but it is definitely there. Again, dealing with the fact that my thumb goes right there. But if we look at the word fox, we get it in fox. If we look at the word over, we have it in over. We have it in lazy, although it's not as obvious, especially on camera. The L in beginning of A is much darker than the ZY. Dog has some shading in it, so we get definite shading in the medium. It's just not as obvious because with it being a wetter pen and more ink going down. 15 seconds to dry. Now when we look at the scrubbies, we see that with the medium, it goes from a darker to a much darker tone. The extra fine gets to go from a much lighter to a much darker. And definitely a recoverable smear. So if I smear it, we're good. White lines paper. It's a hit or miss type paper. We have bleed spots. Definitely having some bleed. Not uncontrollable, not touching the page underneath. And this is a paper made to use one side, so it's not the end of the world, but I would prefer to not have some of that bleed. I'd like to see white lines use a little nicer paper. With the 1.1, that looks a little thicker. Definitely. We definitely have, while we have no feather, we definitely have spread. So that's a definite spread for the 1.1. We have no halo, no sheen, no shade. And I'm trying to see, nope, we do have minor, trying to see if that's me or feathering. Let's look at the word blue, if we focus. Come on, focus. So if we look at the U, focus better. Look at the bottom of the U, and that's hard to tell if that's something with the paper because it's so specific, a spot, and it's only there. So I'm saying there's no feather, that there might be some user error, but that's not meaning that that is no feather. I'm going to leave that one up to you on whether this is feathering or not with the 1.1. You can tell me if you think that's a feather or a couple really bad feathers. That could have been something that was on the page to me, though, because it's not anywhere else. Looking at the extra fine, I have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry, super fast drying. The medium's giving us no feather, no spread. I have to move my mic because for some reason I'm doing this like in and out thing as I'm monitoring this. So hopefully this is better. Trying to fix it. And I apologize for these noises. I'm hoping I'm half smart enough to get them out during post. Where was I? The medium has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, just a dark blue. Looking at, 2 seconds to dry. Looking at the scrubby, we see that the extra fine does give us some color variation. The medium, not so much. And when it comes to the smear test, I couldn't even get the extra fine to smear. It dried so fast. So you could recover it because I don't know that you're capable of smearing it. Looking at P. Berger, this is a French rule paper, and I had just picked up a couple pads really to try and work on this crappy penmanship that I have. Turns out this paper doesn't work well for me, and so I cut it up for a bunch of writing tests. The paper doesn't have to be the strongest in the world, and it is not. It bleeds all over. It does touch the page underneath occasionally. With the 1.1, we have no feather. We have spread. We have no halo, no shade, and no sheen. With the I wrote medium again. What in the world was I doing this day? What in the world? We have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. Again, since this is really a practice writing type paper, I'm not worried about certain things of it, but it is how it is. It sometimes is nice to be able to use both sides, but like the white lines, I don't know that you are using both sides of this. When it comes to the medium, I'm seeing feathering for sure in the T of the. I'm seeing feathering for sure in the seconds and in the Z of lazy. So it's not all over. It's not crazy. There's only minor spots of feathering. I don't see any spread. No halo, no sheen, and no shade. 4 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby both show us we're not going to get any kind. Oh wow, did I just come way out of focus? The extra fine and the medium scrubby both have no shading whatsoever. So we're not expecting to get shading. And the smear test, you could recover this. Absolutely. And since it's a student paper, that's a good thing. That's all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine Blue Black, I would prefer to find an ink that would complement its color on the page. And I chose Diamine Pink because it's, well, a pink ink. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Diamine Blue Black? Well, I like blue black inks. And this is the king of shading of blue black inks. If not, the uncrowned prince. This is a fantastic blue ink for those that do like blue inks like me. Thanks for watching.